Hey folks, I'd like to welcome you to today's Supercharge AWS session. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today, and I really appreciate all the folks that took the time this afternoon and perhaps this morning to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about how we can take your AWS environment and make it even better if that's possible, and we're going to do that with Zadara. So today on the line, we have three folks. Myself, I'm Doug Jury. I'm the VP of Partner Marketing here at Zadara. Been here about 9 years. Sean Yakeley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, this is Sean Yakeley, and I'm the Senior Director for Strategic Enterprise for Zadara.
And Brian Cochran, our host and from Storage IT. Brian?
Hey everyone, Brian Corcoran from Storage IT, Account Manager. We really appreciate you guys all coming today. We're really excited about this technology and we see a lot of value in it, and we think you will too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, folks. As we start to look at the kind of the layout of AWS storage solutions, you folks know these all too well. It's broken into file and block and object, and then it's also broken into the data transfer products and value that they bring to the table. Amazon, I know, Zadara's been around for 9 years. We really drafted behind AWS quickly in 2011. And AWS has been around for many years before that as a leader in infrastructure as a service worldwide. File, block, and object are really the three principles that people look at today. The interesting thing here is that they're really three different products. File, block, and object are three different products, three different sets of tools, and three different ways of doing it. So we're going to kind of delve into that in a little bit more detail for everybody. What really sets AWS apart is they've just done things so darn well. Security, this fine-grained control and so forth with certifications and accreditations and so forth. 125 plus services. I know I was at the reInvent show and they said there are thousands of engineers cranking out new products pretty much every month and every quarter, and you have to respect that, of course. 1 million plus customers and counting. I saw a number on terabytes under management. It's a crazy number, and you all know that extremely well. Global footprints, machine learning, certainly something that has really evolved over the last few years. Machine learning using data and integrating with AWS and so forth. Partner community of 4,200 marketplace products and so forth and partners, and then enterprise leader in the Magic Quadrants through Gartner. We have been, like I said, since 2011, we at Zadara have been really drafting behind AWS. We were an AWS partner in 2011. We have multiple competency designations, if you will, from storage competency, media competency, and all these other types of things. So we know Amazon, AWS extremely well. We know the fact that our products work extremely well with what they're doing. And then the most recent announcement that we're here to make is that our ability to work really in cooperation with Outpost and AWS. And if you think about it, when we came to the market in 2011, AWS was block, EBS, and S3. Those were the two protocols that they supported. They didn't have anything for NFS. They didn't have anything for CIFS. And that really is the same scenario we're in when it comes to Outpost today. Is they support EBS and they support S3 protocols and so forth. But what we can do by really taking part in the Outpost environment is add again back to the infrastructure, the NFS, the CIFS, the Active Directory, snapshots, high availability, all the things that we're going to go through in much more detail as we go through this. The ability to do block and file and object all in one hardware. Remember I said that AWS has block and file and object, but they're in three different products. We can do that all in a central product, integrated with Outpost, integrated with the AWS clouds and so forth, in being able to do the 100% availability, the 100% uptime SLA, secure, encrypted, certified, all the things that we want to do. If you read this quote here, with Zadara VPS on AWS Outpost, customers can benefit from a comprehensive data management solution for any application in their environment on AWS Outposts or in the AWS regions for a truly consistent hybrid experience. We're going to talk a lot about that today and how we can stand on the shoulders of the success of AWS. So if you look at this diagram real simply, you have your Outpost, you have your Zadara, and inside that on-prem environment now, we have the ability to do block and file and object all on one common set of, as Sean will talk about, tools, technologies, and techniques. We also have the ability to do offsite storage, whether that be to Zadara or to an S3 environment. So Sean, I'm going to hand it over to you, and what we're going to do a little bit here is we call it sportscaster mode. We're going to kind of go back and forth so you kind of hear from a couple of different people. So Sean, you want to talk a little bit about how we make these customers even better with introducing Zadara to the AWS infrastructure?
Absolutely. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, and that's very important to understand, because there can be some confusion sometimes with Zadara, with having storage, that it's an either or. People will think, so should I do AWS or should I do Zadara? It's an additive, and this is how the company got started 9.5 years ago, was added features and capabilities in the cloud. We saw the need out there. To that end, this is storage as a service. Now, as you know, every single vendor out there has storage as a service as a line item. And the good ones will let you grow, but the key difference is this is not creative financing. It's not a lease. This is a true consumption model. One of the big value adds within AWS is no noisy neighbor. We actually have physical isolation at the drive layer. So this is a critical difference from any other storage vendor in the world. Nobody else has this. It's actually our patent, so that we guarantee uptime, performance, and have the 100% isolation from a security perspective. In fact, if you talk to a lot of companies from a regulatory compliance, there's many that can't go into the cloud or won't go into the cloud or even into a data center. What are the two biggest reasons? Number one, performance. Number two, security. Those are the added value that Zadara brings to AWS and to all of the cloud providers. This ability to grow and shrink and pay for only consumption. So it matches what you would leverage the compute side of AWS, for example, with our storage to be able to have what they need. When we look at AWS, from a workload perspective and what we have, this is a huge also value add. We bring significant performance improvement, again, within AWS. So these aren't different features or that Zadara has a cloud. These are the ability now to run very strong, high workloads in AWS, sharing the same NAS block data in multiple availability zones. That's been one big value add. And then we also have, and we're going to talk more about this, basically the ability to get rid of ransomware. We give you instant restore points, and that's a very big value, both on-premise and in a data center and in AWS or in any cloud provider. So it gives you that air gap, both from a security and from a performance perspective. And then also having the SQL Server licensing. This has been a tremendous cost savings for our clients, with the ability to leverage the basic rather than an enterprise license on SQL. And that has allowed them to save, in candor, tens of thousands, if not more than that, on licensing. So that's something you ought to definitely talk with the team at Storage IT about.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean.
And then when you're looking at your business needs, because ultimately, technology for technology's sake left years ago. So that ability to share of NFS and SMB between Linux and Windows, obviously, and leveraging AD authentication, for example. These are some of the key things that our clients have seen the value with Zadara in AWS. Online volume migration to new services. And one of the big ones is the ability to move data from on-premise to the cloud and back. And we'll talk more about that in just a bit here too. And candidly, some applications are not designed for the cloud. For Zadara, this is a lift and shift. We can literally take something that was never designed for the cloud. In fact, it has a real problem due to performance typically, and we can give you that opportunity to leverage the cloud with what would typically have to be an on-premise capability, and that migration to go, as I mentioned earlier, between on-premise to data center to the cloud and back. And Doug, why don't you take us through kind of what's going on from a Zadara perspective in storage IT, the value that we can bring specifically within AWS, but to their business as a whole.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Sean. So what we want to do, the whole theory here is supercharge your AWS. That's really where we want to take this today. So why storage IT and Zadara? We really have three different pillars when we talk about our products and when we work with our partners. Enterprise grade performance and security. This is really, when we set out 9 years ago to build Zadara, we said we want to build enterprise grade storage, but we want to basically build it with the cloud architecture, the cloud capabilities, all the things that people want to do in a cloud, but don't give up the enterprise grade pieces. So we have the ability to do SSD drives and hard drives, the in-flight and at-rest encryption, but then we're going to bring back to the table snapshotting, mirroring, all the things that enterprise customers really do need. We don't want to ask customers when they move to the cloud to give up some of the cool things that they basically were using. This agile infinite storage, pay only for what you use. Now that's a typical cloud piece there, but what's interesting here is we can do on-prem and in the cloud. And with the Outpost announcement recently, we also can work not only with AWS in the cloud, but we now can work with AWS in the Outpost and on the on-prem configuration. So this is really a huge advantage that we have for you folks out there. And then expert management. We're sort of your off balance sheet IT department. You can now put your IT department back to work for doing things that maybe aren't getting done. A lot of the care and feeding, the firmware upgrades, all the infrastructure type of things. Storage is kind of a needy element out there. There's a lot of things that have to happen with storage, but we can basically do the migration, the upgrades, all those various pieces. Now, you may not remember all three of these blocks here, but fully featured, fully elastic, and fully managed is really where we're heading here. Sean, you want to talk through a little bit about the common set of tools?
Absolutely. One of the things, as I'm sure many of you have seen, is that especially between vendors, no question, you have different tool set. But if you go from on-premise to a colo, and certainly the cloud, often they're very different tools and technologies that are used. One of the real values within AWS and why some of their biggest clients actually use Zadara is it's a common set of tools, technology, and techniques, regardless of where it sits. So now you have one solution that can do NAS, block, file, and object in one box. As you know, every other vendor out there, you'd have a minimum of 2 arrays to be able to do the same thing, and many of them, it's 3 completely separate. Any protocol, we can now do fiber channel, iSCSI, and ICER, again in the same solution, so that you can now define your what we call a VPSA. So the company is Zadara, our solution is Virtual Private Storage Array. The best way to think of it is each VPSA is the equivalent of its own SAN. So now one group might need some NFS, another might need some CIFS, and you might have a mix. One group, one project even, right, has block, another has file. So that ability to do any protocol, and then as I mentioned before and Doug highlighted, this is any location. So the same tool set, the same solution can be in your own rack, in your own building, again, fully managed. So imagine taking a cloud and putting it in your own site, scales up and scales down, so it's a true consumption model on-prem, certainly any public or private, and really we are the bridge to the public cloud because it gives you options on where you want to be able to go to. So it's the ultimate in terms of hybrid. And when we look at the our coverage, when we look, oh, go ahead, Doug. You had the next one. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do that. So so introducing the Zadara Cloud. This has really been a lot of years of design and development to get this slide on the screen here. The Zadara Cloud, this is kind of a logical view. It's made up, it's software-defined storage. A lot of you know what software-defined storage is all about, but we take it to the next level. And the next level really is what we're going to call isolation. We're going to call, if you want to, we're going to use standard x86 servers. We're going to use standard solid state drives and SATA drives, and we're going to add to that deduplication and compression. We're going to add very, very fast switching. And then we're going to take all this technology and we're going to put it together at 2 different protection levels. One is called RAIN, redundant array of independent nodes, and the other one is RAID, redundant array of independent disks. So what we're going to do for the storage nodes, if you will, we're going to basically associate those the same way we would normally for disks, but we're going to do that at the server level. Okay, that's the first takeaway, is we're now going to have this N+1 or this redundancy at the node level. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're now going to basically be able to take the cores and the drives and the memory and the cache, and we're going to be able to create an environment. I'm going to kind of show you the birth of a VPSA here in just a moment, a virtual private storage array that Sean talked about. But we're basically going to take this mix, this hardware mix, and we're going to be able to stand it up so we give you exactly what you need when you need it. And now you can connect it to your EC2 servers, you can connect it to your Outpost, you can do a lot of different things. So software-defined storage, patented technology, takes this stack of hardware that Sean is going to show you in the next slide. Where do we take this hardware? Where do we put it so we're most effective for you folks running on AWS platforms? So Sean?
Yeah, so one of the things, again, that we're highlighting is Zadara can be at any location you want. So it physically can sit within, our MSP partners, for example. It is the bridge to the public cloud or out to the colo. What we are is cloud adjacent when it comes to the public cloud. And we'll talk more about that in terms of being able to go in via direct connect, for example, or express route into Azure and so forth. So it allows you to have options in terms of clouds and geography, and then certainly on-premise in your own site. Some of the clients who have this are BLM, Omnitrax, for example. Many of our clients leverage us in AWS and Google and Azure, and then certainly our partners and data centers around the globe. And that's one of the key things, kind of the message is, what if you can put your data where you want it geographically, rather than being tied into any vendor? You can leverage your local colo and leverage the cloud where it makes sense, public and or private, and leverage it on-prem where you need it, even at the edge, which we'll talk about more in a bit here too. And when we look at the location, yeah, go ahead, Doug.
I just wanted to jump in for a moment. It's really funny, the electronic driver logs, take a look at that image right there. And as I was driving down the road on vacation a couple of weeks ago, I pulled up next to the parking lot, and I pulled up next to an 18-wheeler, and I saw this placard on the side. It said powered by Omnitrax. And I said, oh wow, cool. I got to bring that back to my partner, back to my customer, Omnitrax. Now, the interesting story about this is that these trucks go down the road, and they have basically GPS, of course, and then they have log tracking and how much went on the truck and off the truck and all those things. So they get to basically drive by the way stations, and they don't have to worry about a lot of the administrivia that goes on out on the road. So when you talk about reliability, durability, highly available systems, when the system goes down, whether it be AWS or Zadara, when that system goes down, those trucks basically now have to go through way stations. Essentially, the trucks stop. And so we take this extremely seriously when we start to see customers like Omnitrax. The Bureau of Land Management over to the right, that logo, they're in 3 different sites, and they're always triangulating these image tiles that come down from satellites and pictures and drones and all kinds of things there. So I always like to take our technology to the next level, where it's not just people crunching numbers. These are real human activities that are going on in these environments out there today. So Sean, the map here, talk a little bit about the map. I know you've been very instrumental in putting a lot of these little dots out there.
Sure. Now, this is something, and when we talk about our relationship with AWS, we're bluntly not just blowing smoke. We're in almost every single one of their regions around the globe. And in almost, as soon as they're building out, we're there with them because they have clients who want this. And as you can see, but beyond that, though, Zadara has over 300 points of presence, and these are our larger public sites. Besides that, we actually have thousands of what we call, again, the VPSAs around the world. And if you recall, the beauty of it is we have built-in replication so that you can move data between any of these sites. So if you have a global presence or the need for data and data sets anywhere in the world, Zadara gives you functionality and capability that actually is bigger than any of the public cloud providers, and that's why it's complementary to where they're located, and it brings you many more options around the world. And Doug, when we talk about the technology, one of the key things, our patent is the multi-tenant efficiency with single tenant experience. if you wouldn't mind going through it, because I would say from a customer perspective, this may be the #1 thing that has been the most unique about our technology that people want, because it's something that no one else can do in terms of their typical multi-tenant environment.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Sean. It's really interesting. When I go through a demo, and I'm not going to do it today, but when I go through a demo of the creation of the VPSA, that's that little icon off to the left. I'll basically go in and I'll create a VPSA, and then I'll come into this slide and I'll go through it. And almost every call that I take with a customer, whether it be in person or through some type of a web tool, I hear the word cool, or that's cool, or that's amazing. And so I'm going to go through this, and in your mind, I want you to be thinking about whether, if you're a storage person or whether you've been in the high tech or IT business for a while, this is something that is so unique. I've been doing storage since the early days of Digital Storage Works, way back. I've been in the storage industry for about 40 years now, and this is some of the coolest technology. So let's take you through this a little bit. Remember the Zadara Cloud, and we had storage nodes, we had drives, and we had cores. Well, now we're going to explode that view into a little bit more detail. So here up above, we have 6 storage nodes, and above those storage nodes, we have the cores, and they're all different colors. And then down below, we have the disks. So I'm going to go to what I call an e-commerce page. And the e-commerce page says, okay, pick out what site I want to go to. So here, I would pick out one of those sites down the left. So let's say I click on, in my e-commerce page, I click on US East. So now I'm in Northern Virginia, Ashburn, Virginia. So I click on there, and then I basically give my VPSA a name. So in this one, we called it VPSA #1. And then I select the size of RAID controller, or the size engine. Because one of the things that we talked about when we first started to put Zadara together is we wanted to basically give customers the ability to increase performance, increase drive types, do all the various things that you can do on premises, but make it very simple. 4 clicks and you're in and you're out. So here, I'm showing that this particular customer in Zadara VPSA #1, perhaps they selected 4 solid state drives. They selected a 200 engine, which simply means that I'm going to take 2 cores out of my software-defined storage stack. So you see the 2 green cores up on the top, active and standby. And I basically have now created a VPSA with its own login, its own credentials, its own disks, its own cores, its own memory, its own cache. So the whole concept of noisy neighbors goes away, because none of this technology is being shared with any other customer in the public cloud. Now, when you take this to an on-premises configuration, you got to believe that there's noisy neighbors happening in on-prem as well. Engineers are upset with marketing. Marketing doesn't have enough resources because sales is running some reports, and all kinds of noisy neighbors happen within an enterprise. So this would work equally as well to sequester, to isolate the workloads. So the first one we had, VPSA #1, let's say it's on SSD drives, perhaps that's a SQL database. And then down below, the next customer comes in, and they basically create a VPSA, and they've selected 10 drives and a 400 engine. So they have their 4 cores, they have their memory, their cache, their logins, credentials, encryption, everything is completely isolated for them. And then down below, we've introduced object storage. So in this one hardware stack, we now have block, we have perhaps file, both CIFS and NFS can be shared together, and we have object storage, all running in the same hardware. Now, if this is in the cloud, customers care less about whether it's in the same hardware product or not, but when it's on-prem and you want to basically utilize the same tools, technologies, and techniques to manage it. So now, in this particular environment, I now have the ability to manage all my data types in one hardware platform, that all the drives can basically be utilized for whatever we need here. So this basically is an amazing architecture, an amazing patent that we've talked about previously to be able to do this. Now that I have that VPSA, what am I going to do with it if I want to do some DR or some type of replication or whatever? So let's look at this for a moment. Let's look at #1, on-prem to on-prem. So if I'm doing on-prem to on-prem, I have a customer in Oregon, and I want to basically, mirror that data to perhaps South Dakota. That's easy. Any VPSA on the planet, of the thousands of VPSAs that Sean talked about, any VPSA on the planet can mirror to any other VPSA on the planet. as long as you have the credentials and the logins and all the things that make security work, of course. So number one, we're going to do on-prem to on-prem. Number two is cloud to cloud. So if I have a customer in Northern California and they would like to mirror their data to Virginia and have a very short RPO and RTO to be able to recover in the event of a failure in Northern California, perhaps something environmental or whatever, then I have the ability to do that. And of course, these arrows go either direction. The really important one is number three. So I'm showing this as on-prem, but what if I was to show this as Outpost? So now I have a customer in the central part, maybe Dallas, and they have an Outpost, and they've chosen to use Zadara for their storage solution. And now I would like to do a DR copy, literally 3 clicks away. I click the region, I click the VPSA, I click the go button, and pretty much I'm now mirroring my data to Virginia, AWS, in a cloud adjacent environment to be able to do that. So no matter where your data is, no matter where you want your data to be, we can either mirror, or we can migrate, or we can clone, or we can do whatever we want. So that's really the last installment in the enterprise continuum of being able to move your data, copy your data, DR your data, protect your data, all those other things. So remember, Omnitrax, they run those applications in AWS in Virginia, but you better believe that they mirror it back to Northern California in case something happened on the East Coast, those trucks can keep running. They also have 5 different on-prem sites all around the country. So they moved their data closer to the need for some of their design, engineering teams, and some of the other things that are going on there. So we have many customers that have a mix of on-prem, and they also have it in the cloud. Now, what I want to do is kind of go through some key functionalities. And so I'm going to take the first one here, and it's really cloud-based Active Directory NFS CIFS in a single service. Now, if you look at the icon or the logo up in the upper right there, Ancestry, one of the real key differentiators that Ancestry and Zadara and AWS are making such good partnerships is primarily we have the ability to do NFS and CIFS in the same service. So now, if you look at EFS and FSX, great products, but they're both different services. They're different services within AWS. They don't kind of work together very well at all. So Ancestry needed to ingest data in a Microsoft environment, i.e. CIFS, and they wanted to be able to create derivatives and create the actual versions that you see when you go into Ancestry.com and look at your genealogies and things like that. Well, that application to create those derivatives is in Linux. And so now you're an end customer and you're going, I have half of my brain is in Microsoft and CIFS, and the other half of my brain is in Linux and NFS. And can I make those two things work on the same set of data, the same set of storage? And the answer theoretically is no, in most cases in the public cloud. But in the public cloud here, with Zadara and AWS teaming up, we have the ability to do that. Okay, so if you have an application that needs file shares, needs to basically do this in harmony together, many customers have been brought to us by Amazon or by AWS to be able to do that. There's several more use cases, and Sean loves to talk about the mirroring and the clones and the snapshots. So I'm going to send the next 3 or 4 slides over to Sean to kind of take us through some of our other cool technology. And remember, look in the upper right, and you'll see some icons of some customers that are actually using this technology.
Sure. So for remote mirroring, natively, you can now move data from Zadara to Zadara at any location. So this becomes your foundation for backup for DR, for example, and certainly for multi-site location where you need to have different data sets for groups to use. And we can do many-to-one and one-to-many. So we can do bi-directional DR, for example. So you could leverage AWS for a target, but that you can reverse that, right, for another location where geographically they may not have it and you're not having to go to one of the coasts, for example. Again, everything's monitored 24/7, 365. So we're watching this for you, so you're not having to have somebody constantly looking at it. Verizon uses us globally for their voicemail. And this is where they needed it. And they had to have, obviously, the expectation of their users is this is up 24/7, 365. There is no downtime. So that was another thing that I would highlight is this is 5.6 nines of high availability solution. This is not a gateway. This isn't some software this is tier 1 mission critical storage, but at a price point and at a business model that can match much more effectively from a consumption. When we look at the next option in terms of remote clones, this ability to move data again where you need it today, and this is showing it across a geo, the ability with FTI Consulting, how they leverage using clones between both the public and private cloud and on-premise for different locations. But I think of this even within your own company or different groups. If you need to share data typically with somebody and they're going to be working on it, everybody has to have their own full volume copy of the data to work on. We use redirect on write snapshots, which I'll talk about here in a second, to allow you to both have clones and snapshots to meet the need of the actual business. So all local and remote data is written simultaneously to optimize your recovery points. So you may have heard of the term logical failures, human error, virus, and corruption. These account for up to 95% of the time why you have to recover. Well, if you have snapshots, you're able to recover from these in a matter of seconds rather than having to go out and find it on disk or on tape, because it's literally mount up a view and then pull back the data. This is also the foundation, by the way, of how we're able to eliminate the ransomware by leveraging our snapshots with some other technology. But this is also your ability to move the data long-term storage from the snapshots so it can take drastically less bandwidth. So if you are going into AWS or into any other location, right, for DR, for example, quite often network is a huge piece of that. Well, if you can move significantly less data, which is how we do that, this allows you then with thin provision volumes to only move the last data change across the pipe. It can be a significant data savings and obviously drastically faster from a recovery and utilization perspective. When we look at high availability and remote mirroring, back up to S3, this is an actual client of ours, Lumentum. This is going across the Pacific Ocean. They are generating 2 petabytes of data a month. These are chips that are being manufactured, and they have 65 people who want to randomly be able to view the data as the images are being captured of these chips coming off. They then replicate the data across the Pacific to Japan, to another location for storage, and then that's actually going on to Amazon S3 and off to Glacier for long-term storage. Amazon looked into this, and in fact, some other vendors, very large ones, did too, both from a storage perspective and cloud, and they could not actually ingest the data as quick as it was being designed, let alone local, because this is being done at the main site in the customer's manufacturing operation, where we're able to leverage our Docker containers to create these individual data sets that could be used both for test, for development, and to then be able to move over the networking at a much lower cost and be able to meet the time frame, because as you can imagine, 2 petabytes of data being generated a month, the network could never catch up. So this gives you now the opportunity to be able to meet both the networking need and your compliance and business need for a high availability remote mirroring, and then in this case, back up to S3 solution. When we look at, Doug, the Docker containers, maybe you can talk about that, because that's something unique, certainly to Zadara. Everybody, probably heard of Docker that's out there, but it's unique in the way that we have it built natively at the core.
Mm-hmm. So if you think back at remember this is just a learning or education, kind of a classroom here. And if we think back at our first couple of courses here of this curriculum, we talked about software-defined storage. We talked about cores and storage nodes and things like that. We talked about how the VPSA was created, and we talked about the green cores being active and standby and blue cores and things like that. So now that you have this hardware in your mind, we always have cores that seem like they go unused. We always have cores that aren't being used for a storage mission. So what we said was back several years ago is, wouldn't it be interesting to run Docker containers inside the actual storage array itself? And I think to this date, we're the only one that's actually running the Docker stack inside the array itself. Now, if you look at the left-hand side here, you're going to run Docker in some type of a virtual machine. You're going to then talk to the storage over some network, and there's going to be latency involved there. And if you've got millions of transactions, then you're going to pay, even if it's only a half a millisecond of latency, you're going to take 1,000,000 times a half a millisecond, and you're going to end up basically with a lot of latency time there. But if I can run this through the storage array over a backplane, if you will, or over some internal a piece of hardware, the latency drops to negligible or zero. So now I have the ability to do perhaps file system cleansing. I have the ability to do transcoding. I have the ability to create an FTP site right from the array itself. All kinds of crazy things that we can do by having Docker containers running directly inside the VPSA. So now you can basically make the storage basically run some of these high performance applications that you might be thinking about. The 24/7 management has to go part and parcel with everything we've talked about today. The ability for our operations team here at Zadara to really be your best buddies. At 3 o'clock in the morning, let's even make it more interesting, 3 o'clock on Christmas morning, you're about to run out of storage. And so our operations team is always taking a look at things. They're constantly monitoring things. And what they would do at 3 in the morning is they would basically add more storage to your environment. Whether this is on-prem or in the cloud, they will add more drives to it. And then perhaps the next day we'll say, hey, we saw that you were approaching running out of storage, which means that you might theoretically get an error. And we went ahead and add more storage to it. And now let's talk about how we want to do that. So we're going to basically take care of a lot of the alerts, the notifications, things like that, operating thresholds. We can do a lot of those types of things. Zadara offers an SLA, 100% uptime guarantee. So basically we assure that we're going to be up 100% of the time. Like Sean said, our nines of availability is really 99.9995. So it's 5+ nines of availability. And that's through empirical testing over many, many years of doing this. And then of course the non-disruptive upgrades. I'm going through a large upgrade right now where we're going through, the customer has about 100 VPSAs and we're going through and upgrading those certainly at their desired times and things like that as well. And then we have our ops team that's always ready to handle Docker engines, complex challenges, renting EC2 servers perhaps to move data between us and S3 or Glacier or back and forth. There's a lot of really interesting use cases that we can do to do these kind of things. Our customer base is basically, we have, this is a very small slide here, but I can tell a story about each one. And you can imagine if you're a customer that's thinking about this, I mean, we're scrutinized by some of the best out there in the world. NASA, we were out installing this and my engineer was actually at the installation when one of the SpaceX rockets went up. So we were literally 4 to 5 miles from the actual launch pad in there. As Sean talked about Verizon and instant message and things like that, BMW, FTI Consulting, Ancestry. eBuilder is interesting. If a contractor is standing in a parking lot and he basically needs to do some VDI to see some forms or some plans, he would basically pull that off of Zadara storage. Great Wolf Resorts, we handled their actual reservation system. And they're coming back to life right now. We're glad to see companies like Great Wolf are coming back. Getty Images, we're handling part of their music division, which a lot of people aren't really aware that there's a music division there. So Brian, I think you're still there. I know we've been taking up most of the time. Do you want to go through the storage IT a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Doug. So guys, just some info as it pertains to AWS with storage IT. So just know that there's a lot more here than just our AWS and Zadara capabilities. But we are a AWS certified consulting partner. We are signed up with the AWS Marketplace. So when you go to procure Zadara, you could do it directly through us. Or if you don't want to add a vendor to your already long vendor list, you could procure it through AWS and we just send you a private offer through the marketplace, which is pretty nice. We are a woman-owned small business. So not only can your Zadara dollars count towards diversified spend, but we could actually take on your AWS spend and have that count as diversified spend as well. And we have several clients that take advantage of that today. We keep we currently have 5 certified solution architects on staff. We have 8 certified cloud practitioners on staff. We have strategic partnerships with other leading AWS consulting partners. So if there is a project that we, for some reason, cannot take on, we're reaching out to the biggest and the best to help us assist with that. So there's very few gaps in our services portfolio. And then we're always partnering with leading third-party providers of products and services, companies like Zadara. We found you guys. We absolutely love the value prop. We see nothing but value. Anyone who's using AWS, we believe, should be looking at Zadara seriously. And there's plenty of other products that fill other gaps in AWS's portfolio that help out as well. So we're always looking for and bringing products like that on. And then we have the ability to provide consolidated building for organizations. You could have a lot of departments or a lot of subsidiaries, a lot of shadow IT. AWS is one of those things that ends up with multiple payer accounts. We have the ability to either provide consolidated billing for that, or even negotiate enterprise agreements and do migrations behind the scenes to help boost discounts and stuff of that nature. We provide free cloud assessments. We collect all the data. It'll actually tag your resources for you the way they should be tagged when they go up to AWS. And we could do cost analysis and even build migration plans, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of value in that, and we do it for free. So, and then also, if you're already in AWS, we do offer tools that will show potential cost optimization for the applications that are already up there. So this is only some of what we do. I tried to keep it to AWS and Zdara. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to us at our website, and we will get back quickly, and hopefully we can get everything squared away. Doug?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brian. I've got a big smile on my face because we couldn't do what we do without partners like Storage IT. They are the secret sauce that really brings these two large companies together, AWS and Zadara. And it takes partners like Storage IT to really blend this into a single offering, which is really a great segue into this one here. You can purchase Zadara on the AWS Marketplace. So you can go in and you can purchase it that way. You can, and I would recommend you go through Storage IT, and they'll tell you the best way to pursue or purchase this product. But certainly viable here to be able to do it on the marketplace. Basically, we are a CPPO consulting partner, private offer type of ISV or partner, and you can see Zadara, we're in tremendous company with a lot of these other accounts here. So all that means is we work cooperatively with the marketplace as well. But again, Storage IT really is the general contractor here. They're the ones that are going to build the house for you. We're the plumbers. AWS is the carpenters, and Storage IT is really the general that's going to basically build this environment for you. So at the end of today, what I would hope you'll do is you'll go ahead and go to storageit.com and things like that. Go to contact us at Storage IT and contact Brian directly if you wish, and get a more in-depth conversation that we've talked about today, and the ability to really take this to the next level. We just boiled into it, a couple of hours worth of material, perhaps in a 40-minute call, 45-minute call. In the meantime, I think anybody that has some questions, go ahead and type them in. But we do have some questions already that came in while we were speaking today. So Sean, this one's for you, I think. I know that you're kind of the guru on the egress fees and so forth. You mentioned the savings on Zadara in many different areas. Egress fees is one that comes to mind. Can you explain that a little bit for me?
Yeah, certainly, and this is a very big deal. Before I came over to Zadara, I was at HP, and I actually saw a 7-figure quote for one of my clients to get their data back out of AWS. And they frankly had no choice. They had to have it for business and legal reasons. And it was kind of the ultimate golden handcuffs. And this isn't, as you know, just AWS. You have the same thing with Azure and others. One of the key things is that with Zadara, because you're cloud adjacent, you haven't committed your data inside, as I put it, their 4 walls. So due to that, you don't have to pay the exorbitant egress fees that you would typically have going in and out of the cloud. This has been one of the major reasons some of AWS's larger clients, again, are working with us, because they have this capability to go in and have Zadara, the data, I should say, you're using, sit on Zadara in Equinix, for example, then go in via Direct Connect and use the compute and so forth within AWS, but then you're not paying those fees for getting the data back in and out.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean, for that. Another question came in. It says physical isolation in the drive layer. You made a lot of points on this as a unique and valuable differentiator. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And I'm going to say just one word, Verizon. Verizon wanted to come to the public cloud, but they couldn't because of the way most public clouds are designed is they take hundreds, if not thousands of drives, and they go ahead and they create this storage pool, if you will, a very large storage pool. So my data could be running all over these hundreds or thousands of drives, and I wouldn't really know where my data is. Well, if you can imagine, a lot of companies want to know physically where their drives are. They want to basically have the ability to perhaps shred those drives if something happens to them, so that drive can never get placed into a landfill or anything like that. Well, because we isolate at the drive layer, we now have the ability to know exactly where your 10 drives are and your 12 drives are and your 14 drives are. As long as we can get the same performance, which we can, in fact, in most cases, we can get 5, 10, 15x over what perhaps AWS could give you. As long as we can get the same performance and we have the ability to isolate at the drive layer, it adds to the security. It adds to the getting away from the noisy neighbors, because now you're not really competing against hundreds of customers living within that one pool. So it's a very unique thing. And back in 2011, when we sat down and started architecting Zadara and our Zadara Cloud, it was one of the key differentiators. He said, what's the number one problem in the cloud today? And a lot of it is noisy neighbors and performance isolation and kind of keeping the customers from bumping into each other. So that's what we see when we talk about those kind of things. Sean, you talked a little bit about the ability to move into the cloud and back from the cloud and on-prem and so forth, in and out. Can you understand a little bit about moving the workloads back and forth between my sites?
Certainly, in real world example, if you think of month-end reporting of test and dev, right? If you're doing test and development, you might need additional storage capacity, you might need additional performance, you might need additional compute. Well, today you're hamstrung by basically what you have on site, or if you're in the cloud, then you're obviously paying the fees for having that solution available. But it's also one of the huge values of the public cloud, of AWS, for example, where you can have it on demand, you pay for what you use and then pull back out. Well, imagine having that same solution wherever you need it now geographically. Because so far, nobody's figured out the whole speed of light thing. I know we're working on it, but we haven't figured that one out. And the amount of data, there is a maximum amount of data that can go across a given pipe at a given time. So if you have, I think of CAD files and those type of things, certainly digital imaging, drone data, some of the things that we're doing with BLM, with USGS, and other companies where it's very huge, large files that are being dropped. To be able to move those around can be very cumbersome, is the best way to put it. And sometimes it's actually physically not possible. You actually have to copy it local, ship it on a plane, and then download the data set. Zadara changes that whole paradigm. Because of the way that we're able to leverage the data set and move it, we can now move actual workloads from on-premise to a data center, a colo, and to the cloud, and most importantly, back. So this really gives you the best way, if you remember the slide I showed with kind of our geographic, the global footprint we have. Again, if you could now have the data where you need it geographically, rather than being tied into any specific vendor. One of the things I've had often over the last 10 years, companies will say, well, we're looking at AWS, or we're looking at Google, or we're looking at Azure. What if I could change that to, first question be why? And I'll say, well, what do you mean why? It's like, why are you having to make this decision before you even know how it's going to perform and what the cost is going to be inside of there? What if you had a solution that would allow you to have the option at any time to move your entire data set to a different cloud provider? This is one of the huge value adds, to our end users, and one of the things that Storage IT can help you with to figure out who is the best partner, the location, and it may not even be one of the public cloud with having this private option. It could be a colo in your own city.
Very good.
And Doug, I saw a question here too. They were saying, Zadara gives you the ability to put your data geographically. anywhere you want it. That's what I was just talking about. But do you have solutions for remote offices? Well, that's a great question. Yeah, for that kind of edge concept.
Absolutely. So we do. In fact, that is a good question. And so we have several customers that have these edge solutions, if you will. And what we do is we can take the entire Zadara cloud, so the entire cloud, and that we talked about, the storage nodes, the disks, the networking, everything, and we can basically put it in a very refined, very small footprint and put it out at the point of need. And so then you basically, not only are you getting your storage solution at a remote site, but you also have the ability to mirror, as Sean was just talking about, mirror that data back to the mothership, back to the core, if you will, and be able to basically mirror that. And that's essentially, in a little bit larger environment, that's what BLM is doing, is they're bringing the data in from Alaska, they're bringing the data in from South Dakota, and they're basically putting it all into the Denver facility. So do we have edge solutions? Absolutely. Again, contact Brian, and he can basically help you and hook you up with some edge solutions, which start at very, very low cost. Also OpEx, completely operating expense, to be able to do that. Only pay for what you consume at the edge, and be able to basically, like Sean was saying, speed of light, reduce the latency into your own data center or your own business office. It's great for people that have branch offices, remote offices. We call them robo offices, remote office, branch office, to be able to do those kind of things. So I think
There was
actually,
one other question.
One more just came in. Yep, I just saw that pop up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly.
So no, it's on the immutability, and I think that's a great
Absolutely.
one.
So it says your immutability solution will work in AWS. Will it work in AWS as well as at my sites, even in colos? Did I get that right? And I say yes, you got that right. Our immutability solution, or ransomware ability to run with a Veeam stack, be able to run with our solution. Now there's a standard out there called Amazon S3 Object Lock in compliance mode. That's a lot of words. The new word is sort of immutability. The standard is what I just said. So now you have the ability to create a backup that is in essentially worm technology, or write once, read many. You cannot write to it. Remember, ransomware must write something in order for it to be effective. So basically you have this back end scheme where it cannot be written to. It basically allows you to actually go back to what they call day one event. So you now have the ability to go back. If the ransomware has been sitting out there for 3 or 4 days, you have the ability to roll back to day one event and not lose any data whatsoever. So there's really cool technology out there today. If you haven't looked into it, immutability solutions, absolutely contact your friends at Storage IT. We can work part and parcel with those folks and be able to put together this immutability. We also put together occasionally ransomware presentations and so forth. So we can basically maybe do a follow on to this down the road, and maybe be watching your emails and your calendars for something like that. So that is the last question. That one just came in at the 25th hour here. So I wanted to thank our friends at Storage IT and Brian for putting this together for us. We really do appreciate that. Sean, thank you so much for taking your time. And of course, you attendees on this session, thank you so much for taking an hour of your time. I know in what becomes a very busy week as we all move forward. This has been recorded, and you can definitely listen to this later on if you wish. And I hope everybody has a great afternoon and the rest of their morning as well. So this is Doug Jury and Sean and Brian signing off. Thank you.